I'm very happy to be again with the Theosophical Society of America. Like I said in my first video, I have a very special relationship with Theosophy and the Theosophical Society. And in the picture you see the last meeting, or one of the last meetings we had at the Egyptian Society of Ancient Wisdom, which after all societies were banned in Egypt, we formed this purely Egyptian. It was like a secret society which had the library of the Theosophical Society and some other teaching from other societies into this society. And we were only 16 members. And we didn't open it to the public or accept any new members. So after a few years, most of them passed away. And then when there were nobody left, the society closed. So I have very fond memories with the Theosophical Society and its teachings. Now, let us deal with our topic, which is time. Time is a very, very broad topic, and I could speak on it for hours and hours and hours. In my book, Hidden Reality, The Physics of Quality, I go deeper into time. And you might find some of my videos on the BioGeometry channel on YouTube, which deal with some aspects of time. I'm going to deal with time here in a different way. I'm going to deal with the relationship of time and the unconscious realms. So, in a way, we're going to go to the essence of time, to the reality of time. Now, we live in a world created by our sensory perception. So our sensory perception, which forms 2% or less of reality due to the limited ranges of perception we have. And every species has its own ranges of perception. So every species will form its reality through its sensory perception, and it will be projected onto the fabric of holistic, subtle energy background to form a material world. So actually, with different sensory ranges of the different species, you will have different material worlds coexisting or superimposed. The one that's related to our senses will become material for us. The one that's in the range, for example, of the sense of touch will become solid for me. For another species, maybe another dimension becomes solid, and ours is not solid anymore. So the fact that every species has its own sensory range, every species will also have a different, let's say, a different interaction with time. So let us look at time related to each species and related to sensory perception. In sensory perception, time is linear as we know it. So the linearity of space-time creates all the physical laws, creates, for example, all the laws of action and reaction, backwards and forward, and so on. But are those laws universal, or are they sensory range specific? In each sensory range, they have some form of linearity, but the ranges are different. So let us look more into the way we perceive time through the senses. For the senses to be alive, we need a living brain. And with the activation of the senses comes the perception of linear time, comes the perception of space. And also an important fact here is there's a personification activity that happens in the left brain in order to personify things, to give them an identity, separate them from the background. So the left brain has this analytical separative ability to separate things and identify them by getting them out of the background. But on other levels, they are part of the whole. They are not separate. It's our sensory range that makes this personification of things. So time here is sort of a result of sensory perception. But what is sensory perception itself coming from? So for the senses to work, the brain has to be alive. Now, for the brain to be alive, blood and life force has to flow into the head. That means it comes from the body, from our biological functions, from the heart. But it means that our sensory world that we live in is only a secondary phenomena based on the primary phenomena, which is the life of the body itself. But the life of the body itself, taking the example of the heart, the heartbeat and all that, cannot be within our linear time and space as we know it, because it precedes it. So, well, what kind of time exists on this extrasensory subconscious level? It cannot be the same linear time that is created by the senses. So what runs our body actually? It is the multidimensional time of the universe that is running our organs. Now, this leads us to ask the question, if the multidimensionality of the universe, where time and space are fluid, individuality, collectivity, and sort of universality are merged together, and forwards and backwards are the same, present, past, future are one huge phenomena that we can move into. So if this is the case on a subconscious universal time, then our organs should live forever. I mean, there is no linear time governing them. The problem here is once we become aware of our organ functions, once we are aware of our digestion, of our heartbeat, of our breathing and all that, we pull those functions into linear time. So what happens here? The physical part of the organ functions becomes subordinate to linear time and aging and all that. But the higher levels of the biological functions, they are universal, multidimensional, and eternal in a way. So they are part of our eternal soul. The sensory perception has created our identity, which is what we call the mortal soul. And so there are several aspects of time here, a linear one and a multi-dimensional one. Now, this causes lots of problems when we try to get information from the subconscious into the conscious, or when we try to sort of put information into the universal unconscious levels. Now, there is a problem here. The quantification that we have, which is part of the analytical sensory world, does not work on the extrasensory perception. What works there is the quality behind the numbers. So the qualitative aspects of the numbers as living entities with a soul, with higher harmonic dimensions, and the interaction between numbers. These are interactive qualities that are understood by the language of the subconscious. So harmonic motion is understood there. The words we speak in themselves are not understood by the subconscious, not the letters. Then what is understood? It is the void between the letters that has the emotional, mental, or all those qualitative aspects. These are the ones that transcend the actual letters and go into the subconscious. So the subconscious is, let's say, aware or interacts with the harmonious shape of information. So when I say harmonious shape, that means when we speak about frequency in healing, we say this frequency does that, or this higher spiritual level is a higher frequency and all that. This is just metaphoric. It is left brain language, because the subconscious does not understand frequency. The subconscious understands the shape of the wave going into it, because the shape forms the quality of the wave. So the subconscious understands qualities. That is why in biogeometry, in order to understand what happens in the universe, since we know now it is running all the biological systems, we have to have a science of the 98%, of the unperceived 98%. And this is the science of quality. Now, the laws here don't work on the other side. Cause and effect does not work on the other side, because cause and effect is based on linearity. Once you have multidimensionality in all directions, you don't have cause and effect anymore. Even concepts that we have here that are based on time are only translations of what's happening on the other side. They are not real. For example, when we say life after death, the word after means there's a linearity. In a dimension when there is no linearity, there's no before and after. So actually, it is the other dimension on which our left brain dimension is floating on, like a leaf floating on the ocean. So we are permanently living and interacting in the other life. It's not something you go to after passing. You should look at it, it's just a shift of focus from sensory perception to extrasensory perception, just a shift of focus. So all information that comes from the subconscious must be translated, must be time-space stamped in order to be understood, and must undergo, in the meaning level, some cultural associations with information from our sensory perception in order for us to perceive it. So things like, for example, reincarnation. Reincarnation must be explained and perceived in two different ways. The way sensory perception, the way the mortal soul perceives it is one thing, and the way the immortal soul perceives it is a different thing. We can't say reincarnation, because reincarnation means a former life and a future life. But what if there is no sort of past, future, or something, or present in this other dimension. Then we must find a new formula for reincarnation where everything is in resonance together and they form part of the immortal soul. And with every action, new resonant communications happen between similar informations of similar different lives and things. And so the soul is continuously enriched with other contents coming into it from other lives. So it is continuously enriched as we go on. So the other lives exist in our immortal soul. We exist in them. So when we translate that here, then how can I today exist in a former incarnation? How do I exist and all that? This has to be translated into the mental linear time and space way, and based on our culture, it could be understood. We have no other way of perceiving it. We have to perceive it through the linearity and through this form of translation. So time and space here control the way we perceive things. Now, as we said, there's the cultural aspect into it. So the same thing can be understood or perceived differently in different parts of the world and different cultures and all that. There's nothing wrong. They are all translations of one reality, which is the same for all of them, for all the translations. But we should know that there is a translation. So let's look at time. Is time also, perceived time also a translation from a real thing? Yes, it is. Now, time, since it's perceived time, there is an emotional mental relationships because we perceive it. It comes from inside us, projected outside. So there's an emotional relationship. So sometimes you're not sure, is time a friend or foe? I mean, time takes away all the lovely moments and hides them in the past. So time is not my friend anymore. But it was my friend when it brought me those nice moments. But time also is my friend because it has taken the sad moments and put them away. So there is always a relationship with time. The relationship with the physical body and how it ages. I start looking at time from sort of a lifespan. And the moment I look at time with a lifespan, time puts a certain stress on me because I'm not sure of what's going to happen in the future. And I've lost the past. So the best way not to undergo this stress is to live in the present. Living in the present is very easy. Just whenever you are, wherever you are, keep looking at the details around you, at the persons around you and all that, so that as every moment passes, you remember every little detail anywhere in the space, anywhere in time. You remember everything because you were living in that moment. So you live each moment. Okay, that is this time. But time, when we approach death, we find that time, as we know with the perceived time, is not something eternal out there. It has become an entity that we have interacted with. We gave it an identity, we gave it a personality. So time is like my friend who stored everything in my life in a storage, and I'm not very happy that he took all those from me, but a good thing is, just before we both die, time comes to me and says, my friend, it's the end for both of us. So I'm giving you back everything that I stored for you during your life. I kept it safely for you. Now you can have it. And before time passes away, this linear time, I'm giving back all those memories they had to take on the other side with me. So these are all different ways of looking at time. And science, unfortunately, is putting theories about time and all that that are based on linear time, based on projection of time. And what they don't know is all those theories are based on a perception that's not permanent. So what is the reality of time? Where is time? Who is time? Is time a god, like the Greeks said, or the ancient Egyptians said? But that means it's a permanent thing in the universe. Well, let's start from the beginning. To start from the beginning, I will use sort of a stacked layers like that, like we use in the Theosophical Society, where we place the planes of nature in stacks like that. So I have planes of nature, put one over the other like that, so I can have physical, vital, emotional, and so on, and up to the spiritual there. Now I'm going to use a similar stacked arrangement in order to explain creation. Now those stacked arrangements are two-dimensional, so they're very easy to use. Some ancient cultures, for example, like in ancient Egypt, they didn't just use stacked arrangements. No, they went into holistic entities that were superimposed. That's a different way. So while in a simple stacked arrangement, I would speak about this dimension or that dimension. In ancient cultures like ancient Egypt, when you speak about this dimension, it's an entity that is focused in this dimension but has the other dimensions in it, and the other dimension is like this. So you're speaking about entities of the soul. So it's a different way of looking at the same thing. One of them is sort of three-dimensional, encompassing, and the other one is simplified, stacked dimensions. So I'm going to start with explaining time through those stacked dimensions here. So I start with, before everything, somewhere on a divine level, there is the zero. Before creation, the zero equals infinity state. There's no duality here. So if there's no duality, there's no time, there's nothing at all. There is just consciousness. Now, is this why zero equals infinity? If you take a wave, and this wave is like this, you see, a frequency, and you speed it up, it will become a line. So the line, while it seems inert completely, it's not moving like the frequency, it is actually the result of very, very high frequency, so zero would be infinity. So there is a state, what we call zero infinity, but that's the non-dualistic state before creation. Now, from this non-dualistic states, an impulse, the impulse of creation arises. So the impulse of creation, something like this happens, and you get the first impulse of creation. Let's say we make it like a wave like that, or like an eruption of a sphere erupting like that. The thing is, you cannot go from the zero infinity level, you cannot go to creation, to a harmonious, evolving, creative, intelligent, life force-filled duality haphazardly. Because if you just make an impulse like that, you create positive and negative. If the positive and negative touch, they cancel each other. If they don't touch, they go away from each other, they dissipate. So without some laws of harmony, of wisdom, coming from a higher level to control the pulse, we have no creation. So there must be something between the zero infinity level and duality. There must be a region that has all the archetypal laws that are going to be activated in order to have a sort of a harmonious creation. Now, that means we have an intermediate level here. This intermediate level, this is the archetypal level, or it is referred to in some ancient cultures as the primordial ocean, primordial waters, primordial fog. There are many ways to refer to this dimension from which creation arises. I want to clarify something. When we speak about primordial water, we are not speaking about the water element. We are speaking about all the laws that are there that will govern creation, and we're speaking about the existence of all the laws that govern qualities too. So in the primordial waters, imagine that you have the qualities of earth, air, water, fire. All those qualities exist in the primordial waters because this is where you have all the laws. So the laws governing qualities exist in the primordial waters. The ancient Egyptians called this dimension the noon. The noon is the primordial ocean from which creation arose, like a small mound like that they call a tomb. So it's very important to understand that there is an archetypal level where all the laws of nature are there, ready to act upon the pulse of duality. So the pulse of duality is subordinate to all the laws of nature. Now, what are those laws? They are the laws that form the mind. It's the law of time. Because let's take the law of time. That's one of those comes out of this consciousness. In a pulse, when a pulse is like this, it's like a spherical thing, a bulb that erupts in all directions, like that, and comes back. Now, the center here, imagine the center to be a drop from the zero infinity level. And then coming down with the laws from the primordial ocean, from the noon here. And with this, you have a centering, what we call the centering principle. The centering principle with the life force and consciousness and everything. And the centering principle here becomes the centering, the law of time that governs the pulse. So you need something to govern this pulse like that. You see, the pulse as it erupts, you need something to govern it. So the pulse will take, let's take one of its aspects. This is a section, let's say a section in the sphere, and you have this pulse. So the harmony of the creation of the pulse and the shape and the way the pulse moves and all that, they are geometrical laws. So the law of time expresses itself geometrically to control the pulse of creation. Now, this pulse is very interesting because the center of the pulse is 0 equals infinity. This is 0 infinity state. Now, for how is the pulse formed? From the 0 infinity state, the center itself expands and contracts. So when it expands, this is actually the expanded center. So all of creation, all time and space happens within this expanded center. It is centered by the center and contained by the center. So this is a very, I like to say it in a way of by saying everything is centered in nothing and contained in nothing, because it is centered in 0 infinity, contained in 0 infinity. Within it, within this is the pulse of time, the pulse of creation. Now, this pulse of time, it is pulsating so quickly, and like I said before, like when a frequency speeds up, it reaches a level when it seems inert, a line. So the pulses, billions, millions of pulses pulsating very, very rapidly, give the impression of a very, very stable, inert background. So it is absolute inertness with the highest level of energy that forms the background weave of creation. So it is made actually out of the pulse of time. So this pulse is like a weave. Now what happens is with a pulse will create harmonic relationships with other pulses it produces. So a small pulse will produce a larger pulse, a larger pulse, a larger pulse. So it keeps pulsating like this. So what happens is you should not imagine this pulse to be one pulse. No, it is a unity of and the hierarchy of pulses from 0, from the smallest, tiniest, to the largest. So your heartbeat is a pulse, but the life of the universe is a pulse. Your lifespan is a pulse. So they are embedded pulses of creation that form one unity. So it's one unity that holds all those pulses together. So this is the reality of time. The law of time governs the weave that is the cradle of creation. Now, even the law of pulse, time itself, the law of time creates or is active in the creation of universal mind. From consciousness to universal mind, there's a motion here. The center of consciousness is here, but the universal mind arises when consciousness in the pulse, imagine the pulse is spiraling out. So I'll take this like this and let this show how the pulse spirals in and out like this and comes back. So the outward going spiral like that moves through 8 planes or 8 spirals is the archetype, because these are the laws that come from the primordial ocean. So it's the archetype of what? This is the archetype of all radiating energies. So it's the archetype of mental energy. Mental energy is an outward going, spiraling motion. Spiraling means it's highly energetic. And the inward motion, when the spiral goes back like that, is the archetype of all motions of attraction. And like emotional energy would be the inward going spiral. Now mind is not one-dimensional. Mind is not just the outgoing spiral. So we must look at the inward going emotional spiral as a self-reflecting of mental energy inwards. So radiation of mental energy and self-reflection create the universal mind. And then the universal mind becomes part of the weave of creation, because the law of time, universal mind, these are all one thing. It's like what we say, it's like what Joseph Campbell once said, myth is a hero with 1,000 faces. I would say here, time or conscience is not a hero with 1,000 faces, but it's a hero with endless faces. So here, this is the reality of time. So everything in creation is the result of time pulse, and the time pulse is governed centrally. This duality becomes a trinity with the divine zero infinity center governing it. This becomes the time pulse, or the pulse of creation, because it's the pulse that awakens from consciousness through all the archetypal laws here. It awakens all the qualities that we find in creation. They are awakened by this. So creation, it's a pulsating creation governed by zero infinity, and this is what gives it the centering, sort of the centering law that centers it, that keeps it, that means the harmony. And if we look, we can go further. I mean, time does, we're speaking about time, so time does not allow us to go too long in time here. But I will just show you some interesting things about time, and I think we might need another lecture soon to go into it. But time, if I want to look at time, and I'll just take one aspect of time here. You see, all those are aspects of time on both sides coming like this. So they start here, and as you see, they expand here and then here and then here and so on. So the beginning and end come out of the center. So the center is a 0 point, is a zero infinity point. But so is the beginning and end, because they come out of the center. So the beginning of everything and the end of everything is anchored in the zero infinity state. So that's why any time cycle, the smallest to the largest, is best harmonized and affected through the beginning or the end. And the beginning and the end are related. So if you change the quality at the end of a cycle, you change the quality of the whole cycle. So or vice versa, if you change the quality in the beginning, it changes the end. So the beginning and the end in a pulse, you understand, they come out of each other, come back in each other. So they must be in constant interaction and constant communication. So there is no beginning and end, actually. It's just an unfolding of something and then folding back together. Now, I think that we will end it here. And I know there are many questions left, and there's a lot of information left. But as you see, my book, Hidden Reality, is about 700 pages. So here, when speaking about time, and if we say time is the hero with a billion faces or something like that, that means the lecture on time and the unconscious will have to be sort of done in several steps. Now, we have dealt with two things: linear time as perceived time, and then here we dealt with subconscious universal time as the pulse and cradle of creation. This is real time. This is where the theories of time should be applied. The other is perceived time, perceived reality. This is the time of immortality. The other one is the time of mortality. So we should understand both of them because they're interconnected in many ways. Maybe the next time I speak about time, we start speaking about the dialogue between linear time and universal time and how they interact together as in the functions of our body, because it's the dialogue of life. It's the dialogue of life force. So with that, I thank you for listening to me, and till we meet soon, thank you very much.